Welcome to the Sunday morning worship service of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church in Naperville, Illinois for April 23rd, 2023. I am Caroline Bailey and a member of your Board of Trustees. We are so glad that you are here, whether you're present in the sanctuary this morning or watching us remotely. It is so good to be together. We welcome you to our church and invite you to get to know us better after the service. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another on our spiritual and religious journeys while holding ourselves in covenant. The rich liberal legacy of Unitarian Universalism is rooted in our faith's 7 principles. These principles guide our faithful actions as we work to transform the world to be more just and equitable. You may find these principles listed on our website or on the wall in our social hall. Whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. I have 2 announcements for today. Please help your beloved community clean up our beloved space. We need your assistance on Sunday, May 7th, after the service, to clean up the church, both inside and outside. Work with your church friends and have some refreshments too. So sign up in Creeves Hall today, or look for the task sign-up form publicized in our weekly updates. And today, join Reverend Mandy, Steve Cooper, and Neil Lickman to continue the discussion on the UUA bylaw revisions of Article 2, the UUA President's election, and other issues. These will be addressed at the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association in June. So it'll be 12:30 today in the Learning Center, with a light lunch provided for those who attend. And now I invite you to turn to someone you did not come with and greet them with a wave or a good morning greeting. And if you're online, we invite you to greet each other in the chat.
I light this chalice today for our third and fourth Unitarian Universalist principles. We believe in the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and we believe in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Good morning. I am Steve Cooper, the Director of Religious Education at this church.
And I am Reverend Mandy Heisinger, and I have the honor of serving this church as its minister. Growing up is the hardest thing that we'll ever do. And it is really the only thing we ever do. We move through each stage of our lives, learning all that we can, and then figuring out what's important and what can be left behind. We look for counsel. We resist advice. We acquire everything we think is important and pack our luggage. And then we struggle to carry backpacks too heavy. We unload, we go on, and maybe later we find out what we left behind was what we needed. And what we brought is actually not helpful. And we start our journey again, learning, acquiring, sorting through our backpack, leaving behind stuff, choosing pathways, feeling bound, feeling alone, feeling crowded in. And each of us grows. As each of us grows, through childhood to adolescence to adulthood, through stages of discovery and mastery of each stage of our lives, we encounter the challenges of casting off clothes which no longer fit us, of knowing ourselves anew, of feeling our own worth, and of finding what freedom really means. And it seems to me that we go through it over and over. The journey is not a single continuous path. We continually repeat the cycle of feeling free, becoming encumbered, striving to understand and to learn more, then freeing ourselves again, until we finally know ourselves and become ourselves.
In this morning's service, we are celebrating the passage of two young people from adolescence to adulthood in our church community. Ben Sully and Grace Huggins have been active and involved in our congregation. They've been attending classes in our religious education program for most of their lives. So last September, they responded to an invitation to our high school juniors and seniors to be a part of what we call our TAG class, which stands for Transition, Affirmation, and Graduation. TAG serves both as the culmination of our church's religious education program for children and youth, and as a bridge to adult life in the church. Each student, or as we call them, mentee, is paired with an adult mentor from the congregation. And throughout the year, we have met to explore the 6 areas that we believe to be important to one's ongoing life in a Unitarian Universalist congregation. And these areas are UU history and theology, social action, community building, church leadership, and worship. And from their discussions and interactions with their mentors, along with their own life experiences, the youth have created statements of their beliefs at this moment in their life. So since our group was small this year, I also challenged the mentors to write their own belief statements. And this service is their opportunity to present to you their beliefs and the journey that influenced their beliefs.
Mentors change lives. Being the right person at the right time may be enough to change a person's life forever. Human beings are constantly changing, whether for the good or bad. We do not stay the same. Having a positive influence in the form of a mentor can make or break a person's life. Years from now, our youth will remember the adults that have changed their lives, not just their mentors, all of you. In some cases, mentors may have been the first people that have believed in them. That experience of having an authority figure believe that they could succeed carries on forever. We want to acknowledge our TAG mentors, Chris Brown and Joe Wilmarth-Tina. During the past, yes. During the past 7 months, our mentors have accompanied our youth on their journey, sometimes leading and sometimes letting the youth lead. They share their experiences with the youth and listened to their stories, but most importantly, they took time out of their lives to be companions as the youth transition from adolescence to adulthood.
So before we start with our opening hymn, I want to give you some insight into this song. If you study the words to Blue Boat Home, it may occur to you that the song is about taking a journey. And not just any journey, one where there's a lot of soul searching and trying to figure things out. Sun my sail and moon my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep. Just like our youth and mentors have been doing for the past 7 months in the TAG program. So please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home. Remain standing and cite the covenant with me. With love, we send you. No. We come together to affirm our relationship with one another, our shared commitment to our Unitarian Universalist principles, and to our DuPage UU Church community. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous in relationship with each other so that we might transform ourselves and the world.
Before I share our joys and concerns, I just want to let the folks know if we still have internet, we're having internet issues. So unfortunately, folks at home may not actually be hearing the service. But we're recording, so hopefully it will stream later if you are at home and not hearing the message that I am saying. It is the benefits and curse of technology, right? We are a caring community. We care for each other, our world, and creation, and each week we share our joys and concerns with each other, some spoken aloud and some that hold and remain in our hearts. This week I'd like to begin by sharing our flower announcement. The flowers were from Sarah Rubin in memory of her mother, the sweet and kind-hearted Pamela Pizak Ayers, is that correct? On what would have been her 70th birthday. Missed and loved always, Sarah. May her memories be a blessing to you. I also have a message from Bev Becker. Margaret Martin Clark, age 100, died peacefully in her sleep last night, which would have been a few nights ago, at her residence in Colorado. Margaret and her husband, Ed Clark, were longtime members of this congregation and provided leadership to many in this space. Our hearts are with their daughter, Casey, as she remembers her mother. Today, I would like to share for our prayer a poem by the Reverend Emily Dettar-Burt from this lovely little book called Held, Blessings from the Depths. If you have an opportunity to purchase it, it's a lovely little book. Please join me in a reflective moment. Beyond our boxes. When you feel constrained, when your mind makes hard limitations like skin pushing against a cramped space, rediscover the dirt under your fingernails. Trace the veins under your skin. Find the universe stuck in your throat. A cosmos stirs in your heart, connecting your trillions of cells to the infinite universe that cradles you. Life is so much more than the daily demands of our preconceived notions. You are so much more than all the stories you tell yourself. Breathe and remember the limitless possibilities held within your fingertips, the miracle of your molecules, growing into someone you may not know, who will be a wonder to behold.
It is time to gather, and I would like to invite all the children, youth, to come join me up here while I tell you a story. Come on up. Come on up. It'll be painless. I'm not going to ask you questions. So this is a story from back when Buddha was alive. So in the village where Buddha lived, a bunch of people were congregated together and they were arguing with each other because they were talking about different things that they believe. Like someone would say, well, I believe that this happens after you die, or I believe that God is like this, and they were arguing and just having an awful time because no one could agree on what the beliefs were. So one of the wise people in the village said, how about if I go get Buddha and have Buddha tell us how we should believe or what things we should believe? So Buddha came into the village and he sent the person off to find 5 people that were born blind at birth. And he wanted them to come. And then he also said, and I need an elephant. So they got an elephant. And they got these 5 blind people. It is a nice soft one. And Buddha asked the 5 blind people to stand around the elephant, because they were born blind, so they have never seen an elephant before. So Buddha asked them to stand around the elephant and to touch the elephant and to tell him what an elephant is. Well, the first person grabbed the elephant by the ears. He said, the elephant is like a big banana leaf that you can use to fan yourself. But the person that was at the trunk said, no, you're wrong. The elephant is it's a snake. And the person standing by the leg said, oh, you guys are nuts. It's a tree. You can feel that great big tree trunk. And the person standing, touching the tusks, said, what are you talking about? It's a plow. It has that sharp chisel at the front. And the guy at the back said, you guys are full of it. It's a rope. An elephant is a rope. Well, and the Buddha says, well, you're all right in different ways. It's all based on your... An elephant is an animal. But Buddha said, it's all based on your perspective. You are all right, but you all have a different perspective. So all your beliefs can be right. It's soft, isn't it? So it is now time for the kids that are 3rd grade and younger to go to class. 4th grade and older are going to stay to listen to the belief statements for the rest of the service. So preschool through 3rd grade will go to class, and the rest of you can stay here. So let's sing to the children.
taken by the woods, even though you're aware of the slippery cliffs and the big black bears and the slough. Snares is taller than yourself, ferns growing as thick as the trees. Yeah, you're looking for a flag at the top of the hill. It's a race against the light. No one false step can mean stay in the night. Yeah, that's why you should never travel alone. No, you should never.
Good morning. My name is Chris Brown, and I am Ben Salih's mentor. So, here's my idea. What if we threw a huge year-long party in Hawaii, and every human being on Earth came to that party for just one day of that year? Awesome party time. Now let's see, that's 8 billion people divided by 365 days. That's just over 2 million people a day, and that means roughly 11,000 flights per day. This is the kind of question that kept popping into my brain as I was pondering my beliefs. So what kind of wisdom could I possibly mine from this ridiculous scenario? Well, first of all, I believe that we should live simply. People, especially Americans, have lots of stuff, go lots of places, and do lots of exciting things. And we're really good at coming up with new things to sell each other, like crazy year-long parties in Hawaii. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with novelty, our culture often worships it over many things of greater value. I try my best to enjoy simple things. I go birding, I garden, I enjoy a good book. I try not to buy too much stuff, and I try to enjoy what we have to do at home. Another small problem with our Hawaiian getaway plans is that not everyone's going to be able to afford it, not by a long shot. I'll wager that less than 10% of the Earth's population could cough up enough dough to get there. There are plenty of people on this Earth that can't even afford a good meal. Heck, 11% of the households in the US already fall beneath the poverty line. And at the same time, there are those people who wouldn't even flinch at the price tag of our Hawaiian extravaganza, which has got to be a couple $1,000s at least. I believe that the gap between the rich and the poor is perverse. Right now, the 10th percentile of household incomes in the US is around $16,000. And the 90th percentile is around $210,000. That's a 13-fold difference. I can't say I know exactly where I would draw the line on this, but I'd certainly put it below a factor of 13. I know that we live in a market-driven economy, but we need to enforce limits for the sake of human dignity. So back to our vacation plans. 8 billion people, that's a lot. Seems to me that not all that long ago it was 7 billion people. We better get on this before we reach 9 billion. You think airfare is going to be expensive with 8 billion people vying for it? Just you wait. I believe that there are already too many people on this earth, and that everlasting growth is not a sustainable model. I mean, think of the earth and its resources as a pie. If we keep on slicing it into smaller and smaller pieces as our population grows, and we're already taking, we keep on slicing it into smaller and smaller pieces as our population grows, and we're already taking way more of it than we should as a species. If we want to improve the quality of life for the people who are here, and if we want any chance for the wildlife of this planet survive, we better start taking less of that pie for ourselves and leave more of it for all the other species who call this Earth home. All right, so having discovered a few structural problems with our Hawaiian Island Partypalooza plan, it might be time to put that one back on the pile of questions to be reconsidered later. Thankfully, I've got another ridiculous scenario for us to ponder. So many of the problems we experience as a nation and a world stem from the fact that we just disagree on so many things. So much hate, war, and bullying, just because we disagree with one another. Why don't we just dissolve all the countries on earth and create new ones based on people's values. All the capitalists can take the Americas, all the socialists can take Africa, Europe, and Asia, and we'll give Australia to the anarchists. And we'll further divvy up people by social, religious, and political leanings. Great, everyone's with their own kind. They don't need to interact with anyone not like themselves. Utopia, here we come. Now, I gotta say, this sounds truly fabulous to someone as conflict averse as myself. But something feels a little off. It feels a little like internet echo chambers brought even more into the physical world. What would it be like to never be challenged on our beliefs? Great, huh? Well, maybe. Would we learn as much? Probably not. I suspect we would just enable each other to stay just the way we are. I believe that we should value diversity of thought, culture, and lifestyle. People unlike ourselves can show us beauty and wisdom that we would have never stumbled on otherwise. We all have different experiences throughout our lives and learn different things along the way, and we learn by sharing our experiences with one another. But what about the conflict? It seems so ever-present and destructive. Wouldn't it be better if we just split ourselves out into our own ideological corners of the world? The internet already makes it easy. With a click of a mouse, you can find 10 people online who agree with you. Why not bring this strategy into our offline lives? I'm right, you're wrong, and you're crazy. I'm moving to Socialistan or Capital City. I believe that we need to learn how to manage conflict more productively. Too often, we value winning over our relationships with one another. We don't necessarily have to agree, but we at least need to learn. We at least need to learn to live with one another. Well, maybe our plan to split up humanity into homogeneous ideological groups isn't such a great idea after all. I'm pretty sure we'd still find ways to argue with one another, even when we're amongst our own. I mean, look at this church. We don't always see eye to eye on everything. Better to hold on to each other and make the best of what we have with who we have here and now. If we can do it as a church, that's great. If we can do it as a city, a state, a country, or a world, so much the better. The beliefs I've shared with you today certainly aren't the only things I believe, but I feel like these are some of the things I believe most passionately. And as a UU, I accept that my beliefs may change, but I think I'll hold on to these ones for a good while, if not for the duration. And while I still think that putting your beliefs down on paper like this is a challenge, it's definitely more of a challenge to live your beliefs. I think I do a decent job of living simply already, but I have a long way to go before I know how to manage conflict productively. Thankfully, I know that this is something that's on the mind of this church already. So this should be a good place for me to practice this and all of the other beliefs that I need to hone. Thanks.
With your feet on the air, your head on the ground.
Hello and good morning. My name is Benjamin Salih. I am a senior at South Elgin High School, and today I have come here to give you all a little piece of me. I would first just like to thank everyone for taking time out of their day to be here, and a special thank you to everyone who extended their support and patience throughout this process and helped me complete this project. In the light of having true honesty and openness, I'd like to admit that I did genuinely struggle with creating this statement on multiple occasions. There were simply too many options, then too little, and at certain times I couldn't get myself to think of anything at all. Something with such a broad title like belief statement was impossible for my brain to narrow down and connect to. I mean, I am a gay, transgender, neurodivergent, and disabled youth. You'd think it'd be pretty easy for me to roll some dice and simply speak about one of those things. But for some reason, that didn't feel right. All of these things do make up my identity and are very important to me, but it didn't feel like I could use such broad titles to make the kind of impact I wanted to. Furthermore, I am 17 years old, graduating high school in a little over a month, and will then be entering the world as an adult for the first time. I personally struggle to see how someone who has not set foot into the world with their own 2 feet can truly know what they are supposed to think about things such as political beliefs, morality, or existence as a whole. I fumbled through a million ideas of what I should use this opportunity to share with you all, but nothing felt right. This cycle repeated and repeated until the weight of it all became too overwhelming, combined with every other expectation for me right now, and then it clicked. This exact feeling so lost and hopeless and overwhelmed, is something I have felt a million times over. Every project, every deadline, every expectation throughout my life has had the same cycle. I've gotten to the point that I now anticipate and expect it with every new chapter of my life. Now, I know not everyone in this room will be able to relate to the sentiment, at least not to this extent, but for those who do, I decided the most important thing I'd like to leave with any of you is the feeling of being understood and not being alone anymore. And for those of you who may not relate, I hope I can help you understand those around you who might just a bit better. I've been attending this church since before I could even start forming memories. I attended all sorts of youth classes and groups and field trips throughout my childhood, so I'm sure I have at least a somewhat familiar face to a lot of you. It's truly fascinating how we as humans recognize each other, how a face we've seen a few times, even in passing, years later can spark an inkling of recognition, of emotion, of connection, regardless of how much that person has changed. I have definitely changed a lot over my time in this church, perhaps a bit more than the average person. My personality, my identity, my presentation, my appearance, and as many of you have noted, my hair seemingly changes every time we are reintroduced. My goal for today is, throughout all of that change, I hope I can make that connection with you, give that spark of emotion, and leave you all with some sort of memory. A token that will stay with you until we meet again, and can recognize each other either once more or for the first time, continuing the cycle of human interrelation and igniting that spark anew. And I have a video I created to share with you all.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn 1017 in our teal hymnals, Building a New Way.
Late night crowd seems to be where I feel most alone. I like to get lost on some old back road, find a shade tree and a honey hole, and talk to my grandpa again. And I see God in everything, trees in pain and nights in spring. So why do I still long for a home?
Good morning. I am Joe Wilmarth Tyna, and I wanted to take a moment to thank Kelly Huggins and Jeremy Huggins for inviting me to be the mentor for Grace Huggins. Grace, thank you so much for taking me on this journey, for spending the last couple months sharing yourself with me, and the unexpected privilege of having to write my own personal statement. As all four of us can attest, it is not easy to write these statements. Nonetheless, this is my belief statement. He ended his argument by calling me, "Joe, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, Tyna." Joe, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, Tyna? Who the hell does this guy think he is? He didn't even know me. And he's calling me out in front of our entire college class. 20 years later, and it still stings, that jab. But that guy in my college English class, he wasn't wrong. And no doubt, I had made an argument that was steeped in my own suburban, middle-class bias and privilege. And despite trying to deviate from my conservative parents, I still held prejudices that needed challenged. In that moment, I certainly did not appreciate the validity and truth of his comments. I struggled to overcome my own indignance. But that guy in my college English class did me a favor by calling out my own BS and my own hypocrisy. He gave me an opportunity to reflect and to grow. He gave me knowledge about myself that I could not simply have gotten on my own. Now, I grew up a Unitarian Universalist, and when I started at Xavier University, I had a very false sense of my intellectual superiority. I'm not the only one, apparently. As a lonely kid, I gravitated towards books, so I was pretty well read, including some of the old Unitarian favorites of Whitman, Emerson, and Thoreau. I considered myself knowledgeable and enlightened. But to be honest, my detached intellectualism was really escapism and naivety. I didn't feel safe or accepted in my broken family of origin where I learned self-reliance instead of how to be in a meaningful relationship with somebody else. By 13, I regularly cooked dinner for my family. I looked after my younger sister. I did most of the household chores, and I excelled as a student. And out of sheer necessity, I learned to just go it alone. And the older I get, the more I realize that Henry David Thoreau's On Walden Pond is a myth, and maybe even a dangerous myth. As an introvert and a nature lover, I totally get it. I get the appeal. The idea of retreating to a cabin in the woods is particularly enticing to a parent who is, I will admit, particularly overly sensitive to noise. I appreciate that my children stayed for this belief statement. But 2 years alone, could I reach an elevated plane of existence by transcending the world around me? Frankly, after 2 weeks alone, I would probably look like Jack from The Shining. And whether 2 weeks, 2 years, or 2 decades, I would emerge from that cabin with no more skills and abilities to engage my problems or the world's problems than when I went into that cabin. Can someone thrive alone by living in the woods? No, I don't think so, not in my experience. So a few weeks ago, Laura and I watched The Whale, which is a very different story about living in isolation. And though it's a work of fiction, I believe the film is a realistic and cautionary tale about retreating from the world. And by the end of the movie, if you've seen it, I was a sobbing mess, like just sobbing. Without revealing the details, this is a story about an obese man, his name is Charlie, who after 8 years of self-isolation and self-destruction, he's confronted with his impending mortality. And in an act of desperation, Charlie gives himself 1 week to repair years of damage with his estranged teenage daughter. But 8 years alone in his apartment did not heal Charlie's wounds, and it did not prepare him for dealing with his traumatic past. And though Charlie hides in his apartment for that hour and a half or 2 hours length of the movie, it's on full display. And like most tragedies, Charlie has seemingly known the cure for his situation for years. He genuinely believes that people are good, and if he would just let them in, they would take care of him. The tragedy is that he's the one who keeps himself isolated and shuts others out. The tragedy is that he is the one keeping himself isolated and shutting other people out. And if my younger self had ambitiously set off into the woods, I would have fancied myself a self-reliant Thoreau who was isolating in search of some greater truth. Today, I realize that I'm much more like Charlie, that if I'm going into isolation, it's because I'm really trying to avoid something painful or to avoid my own anxiety. A crisis in my early 30s, fatherhood, a pandemic, they are all 3 life events that make me absolutely certain that finding and engaging in a community or in multiple communities is truly essential. The guy I mentioned at the beginning of the story, the guy who roasted me in class, his name is Ryan. And shortly after that savage verbal takedown in English class, we started playing racquetball. I did get to beat up on him a little bit. We started sharing meals in the cafeteria. Ryan would later become my college roommate, a best friend, my purveyor of new music, and eventually the best man at our wedding. When Laura and I celebrated our 15-year anniversary during the pandemic, Ryan joined us on our Zoom, and he led us in a renewal of our wedding vows. I invoke Ryan today because he underscores my belief statement that I am a better person because of others. I am my best self when I am engaged with my community, and I believe that all of us are healthier and more flourishing when we find our people. To better ourselves, to improve our environment, to make real change, we have to engage. We cannot retreat.
They needed a good friend as I've been. Don't get me venting on friends who resent you, cause all you've ever done is been a noose to hang on to. They thought was a necklace and reckless. They fell into hell where you both hang with nothing to do but scratch, kick. Like gravity went like fall, this, like gravity went like. You could leave it all behind. Even the devil need time alone sometimes. You could let it all go. You could let it all go. It's called free fall. It's called free fall.
Hi, my name is Grace Huggins, and Joe, thank you for being my mentor. This was a very fun experience. These past few years have been filled with self-discovery and hurt, as I imagine they have been for the rest of the world. I wish I could say that I'm the same person I was before the pandemic. COVID started at the end of my 8th grade year, while I was still young and innocent. During COVID, my grandmother died slowly and painfully. In a sense, she was my childhood, and when she died, my childhood ended. We used to live next door, and I learned how to ride my bike by riding it to her house. We would have weekly sleepovers and bake and craft things together. One night, I remember we stayed up as long as we could making cookies. We looked up recipes and tried to make new ones we had never made before. We had surprisingly made too many, and she suggested the next morning that we take them to a homeless shelter. That's what I remember most about her. She was selfless and kind. Real kindness, not the fake kind you do when people are watching. She always held the door for people and was always trying to make people smile. She was probably the best person I've ever known, and I try to be kind like her. She taught me to sew, and she would take me to her quilting shows. She made quilts for me and my whole family, and I'm grateful that I still have that connection to her. I like to sew clothes, and she sewed quilts. Sometimes I wonder if she learned the same things I did, if she also pricked her finger on a needle, or also had a hard time threading the bobbin. Leading up to and after her death, I became very isolated from my friends. Not just because of her decline, but because I had family that was also immunocompromised, so we had to be extra careful to avoid catching COVID. I'm not resentful for keeping my family safe, but I am sad that keeping them safe meant not being around my friends and the people I relied on for a year. It was hard going through one of the worst times in my life and having no friends I was able to talk to. None of them had strict COVID precautions like I did, so they would get together without me, and eventually we just grew apart. Once the COVID lockdown was lifted and I returned to in-person school, things were never the same. I reconnected with friends, but I remained closed off and depressed for the rest of the year. I was still me, I was still creative, and I was still a nice and kind person, but I don't think I will ever have that same childlike wonder about the world again. However, this I believe. I learned to be okay being by myself and got to know me better. This helped me form better relationships because I know who I like to be around and I'm better in tune with my emotions. I know that I will always be reminded of her and reminisce about the 14 years that I did get to share with her. Most of all, I believe that I am a kind and good person because of the values my grandmother and family taught me, and I believe that I will be okay.
Giving of our treasure is how we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. Your contribution supports the programs and operations of DuPage UU Church. Giving is also how we live our values in the world. Each month, we share our offerings with an organization nominated by the congregation and selected by the special offering team. During April, the special offering will benefit the Animal Rescue Foundation, nominated by Jenny Hobbs. ARF, is a no-kill, all-volunteer, foster-based organization dedicated to rescuing and rehoming homeless dogs and cats into loving, forever homes. They are completely dependent on donations and fundraising and make a huge impact not only in our local communities, but by taking in animals from other counties and even other states that would otherwise be euthanized. The offering is given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude. Since September, the TAG class has met monthly, focusing on one of the 6 topics mentioned earlier. Each topic has a colored bead associated with it, and once a TAG team accomplishes certain tasks for each topic, the mentee earns that bead. The mentors gathered recently and used the beads to make a necklace for their mentee, and I added a chalice pendant to recognize their accomplishment in standing before you today and stating their beliefs. I would like to call forward each tag team and have the mentor give their mentee their necklace of beads. Ben Salih and their mentor, Chris Brown. Spin around, Ben. There you go. Stay here. And great Grace Huggins and her mentor, Joe Wilmarth Tyna.
You who stand before us today have grown beyond the child you once were. With each new day, you will learn more about yourself, your world, your loyalties and devotions. The wisdom you have gained in our free faith will serve you well on your journey before you. Today, we gather to honor you at this time of change and transformation. The Greek philosopher Plato compared the human mind to a ship on which the sailors had mutinied and locked the captain and navigator in a cabin. On such a ship, the sailors feel free to steer the ship as they like, but their direction is erratic. The goal of our religious education and youth programming in Unitarian Universalist congregations has been to help you free your navigator and captain and to guide you as you have learned to take command of your ship of life. Today, you sail your ship out of the safe harbor of this church community. But know that your ship joins a mighty fleet of kindred souls facing the storms together. Today, you steer to parts unknown. But know that wherever you drop anchor, fellow travelers are there to greet you, to guide you, and to be your companions, whatever joys or difficulties your journeys may bring. Congratulations to our TEG class of 2023.
Please rise as you are willing and able and join in hymn number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
You can go ahead and sit. These closing words are by Khalil Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For like goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the boughs from which your children are living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might that his arrows might go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for the gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable.
You know, you can sing loudly if you know the words. You don't have to mumble. We all can join in. Please join me in the words of our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light in our hearts. Until we meet again, may the warmth of our community carry